Welcome to the deep dive. Ready to dive into some mysteries? We're talking North American cryptids today. And you guys, you sent in some wild stories about these creatures. Mountains, swamps, even up in the skies. Let's get to it.
It's like myths and legends. They're like whispers from the past, right? They
Yeah.
tell us about people and places, their anxieties, their history. So when we look at these cryptids, it's a window into how humans and the wild, they kind of intertwine.
All right, let's open that window then. I'm ready to explore. Where do we even start? There are so many cryptids out there.
Yeah. How about creatures tied to specific places, like the slide rock bolter, said to hang out in the Colorado mountains?
Oh, yeah, the slide rock bolter. That's the one that's like kind of whale-like, right?
Yeah.
With those huge hooks for clinging to the cliffs. Super creepy.
That's the one. Now picture this. This massive creature just launches itself down a mountain, devouring everything in its path. Pretty intense image, but it might actually be a cautionary tale about the mountains themselves.
You mean like how dangerous those environments can be?
Exactly. The slide rock bolter, it represents those real dangers. Landslides, rock falls, just the raw power of nature. It's a reminder that even when things seem solid, there are forces out there we can't control.
It's so interesting how these stories, they kind of bubble up from the land itself, reflecting the fears and the hopes of the people who live there.
Absolutely. And speaking of hopes and fears, let's switch gears from the mountains to the forests. The Pine Barrens of New Jersey, home to the Jersey Devil.
Okay. Now that's one I've always been fascinated by. It's like, what even is it? Part horse, part bat, all terrifying.
Right. Totally bizarre. But unlike the slide rock bolter, which is about anxieties about nature, or the Jersey Devil, it's more about the anxieties of people. Think colonial America families struggling to survive in a really harsh environment.
Yeah, I can see where this is going. Tough times breed superstition, right?
Exactly. The story goes the Jersey Devil was this unwanted 13th child, and the mother, out of frustration, cursed it, saying, "Let it be the devil."
And bam! Just like that, you have this creepy winged creature haunting the Pine Barrens. But it's more than just a scary story, isn't it? It says something deeper about what people were going through back then.
Exactly. Big families, high infant mortality rates, the constant struggle against the wilderness, it all feeds into the legend.
It's amazing how these creatures can actually embody those very real cultural anxieties. It's like the Jersey Devil. It's a physical manifestation of those fears, right?
Totally. And the legend's still going strong. Even today, just look at the New Jersey Devils hockey team. But since we're talking about legacies with a dark side, let's shift gears to a cryptid with a much more chilling history, the Wendigo.
Oh, I've heard of this one. Definitely not the kind of creature you want to run into in the woods.
Not at all. The Wendigo, big in Algonquin folklore, especially around the Great Lakes, it's like this chilling personification of a brutal winter. Imagine a gaunt figure, skeletal, with skin stretched thin, eyes burning with this like endless hunger.
Sounds like something out of a nightmare. What kind of anxieties could create something that disturbing?
Survival. The very real, very primal fear of starving during those long, harsh winters. The Wendigo, it embodies the darkest side of what people are capable of when pushed to the edge, when it's a matter of life or death.
So it's not just being afraid of a monster out there. It's about the monster we might become ourselves in the face of desperation.
Exactly. The legend often has someone resorting to cannibalism, and then they become the very thing they feared.
Okay, that is a chilling thought. Really makes you think about where the line is between monster and man, or if there even is one.
Right. It gets blurry. Speaking of blurry lines, let's head south a bit. Deep in Kentucky, in Mammoth Cave, there's a different kind of creature lurking around the Kentucky Goblin.
Okay, this one sounds a bit more my speed. A little mischief after all that darkness. What's the story with this goblin?
Well, unlike the Wendigo, the Kentucky Goblin is more of a prankster. Picture a small, hairy creature, glowing eyes, hiding in the shadows of the cave, stealing food, playing tricks on visitors.
So more of a class clown then. Do we think it could be based on any real cave creatures?
That's one theory. Caves are already pretty mysterious, right? All those echoes, the darkness. Easy to see how someone might misinterpret a sound, a shadow, and suddenly you've got a goblin legend.
Or maybe just some creative storytelling to attract tourists.
Could be.
Yeah.
Makes you wonder how many other cryptids started that way, right? But now, let's leave those caves behind and head up into the skies with a creature of real power, the Thunderbird.
The Thunderbird, now that's a classic. Myths and legends, especially for the indigenous peoples of the Pacific Northwest, right?
Yeah, and picture this. A bird so big that when it flaps its wings, it makes thunder. Its eyes, flashes of lightning, and its very presence. It commands the storms. It's the raw power of nature embodied.
And probably a stark reminder that we are not in control as much as we like to think we are.
Exactly. There's this one legend tells of a massive flood unleashed by the Thunderbird. This catastrophic event, all because humans got greedy, disrespectful of the earth.
It's a warning woven into mythology. Respect the planet, or face the consequences. Speaking of consequences, our next cryptid takes us from ancient myths to a much more recent and eerie mystery, the Moth Man.
Ah, the Moth Man. He's a creature that feels very much of the 20th century, his story all tangled up with tragedy and unanswered questions.
It's funny you say that because I always think of the Mothman and the collapse of that bridge, the Silver Bridge, back in '67. Like, it appeared as a warning, an omen.
That connection is a big part of why the Mothman legend is so powerful.
It's like this creature, with its huge wings and those glowing red eyes, it tapped into something deep within us, this fear of the unknown, of things we can't control.
You've hit on something really important there. These creatures, they often reflect those deep-seated anxieties we have about the things we can't predict, the tragedies we can't prevent.
So is the Mothman real? I mean, is it a creature, a misidentification, or something else entirely? What do you think?
That is the million-dollar question, isn't it? Some people, they say it was just a big owl or a heron, its eyes reflecting the lights from nearby. Others say it was all a hoax, or even something psychological people stressed out after the bridge collapse, their minds playing tricks on them.
It's so interesting how when something tragic happens, especially when we can't explain it, we search for meaning. We try to connect the dots.
It's human nature, isn't it? We're always trying to make sense of the world, find patterns, and sometimes that leads us down some very interesting paths. Makes you wonder, what else is out there? Hidden in the shadows, or maybe, right in front of us? It's that mystery that makes these stories stick around.
You're right. They really do get under your skin. It's like they tap into that part of us that loves stories, loves to be amazed. And we talked about creatures tied to specific places, like the slide rock bolter in the mountains or the Jersey devil in the Pine Barrens. What is it about these places that makes them, I don't know, ripe for these legends?
It's fascinating, isn't it? Like the land itself is telling the story. Take mountains, for example.
Grand, awe-inspiring, but yeah, a little scary too.
Exactly, that sense of vastness, of power you can't control. It's not that far a leap to imagine something like the slide rock bolter coming from that, embodying that wildness.
So the landscape, it kind of becomes a breeding ground for these fears then.
You could say that, yeah. And same goes for a place like the Pine Barrens. It's dense, shadowy, got that history of hardship. Perfect place for something like the Jersey Devil to take root. Danger and anxieties all wrapped up in one.
It's like these stories are passed down, almost like a warning, right? Be careful here, this is what could happen. Like with the Wendigo, that's not just a scary story, it's a warning about greed, about what humans are capable of when things get desperate.
Absolutely. Think about where those Wendigo stories came from. Harsh winters, not a lot of food. The Wendigo, it becomes the symbol for those very real threats.
It's a good reminder that sometimes the scariest monster is us. What we do, the choices we make. Though not all cryptids are doom and gloom. We've got the Kentucky Goblin, more into pranks than anything too scary.
True. That's a good point. These legends, they reflect the whole range of human experience, from fear to, well, just having a little fun.
So, do you buy it? The Kentucky Goblin, is there anything to it? Real creature, misidentified in the dark? Maybe even a clever scheme to get those tourists in?
You've hit on the two big ones there. Misidentification or folklore meeting, well, economics. Both definitely possible. Caves are naturally mysterious, all those echoes, shadows. It's easy to see how a simple mistake turns into a legend.
Our brains love to fill in the blanks, don't they? Create patterns even when there aren't any. Like we can't help but search for meaning in the unknown.
It's what we do, right? Part of being human. And nothing gets us searching for meaning more than when we look up. The sky, the stars, infinite possibilities. It's no wonder some of the most well-known cryptids, the Thunderbird, the Moth Man, they're connected to what's up there.
The Thunderbird is such a powerful image. This creature of myth, controlling the elements without even trying, awe-inspiring, and yeah, a little scary. Like it represents something so much bigger than us.
Exactly. And especially now, with all the environmental stuff happening, the Thunderbird story, it feels, I don't know, really relevant, like a reminder of nature's power, and that we got to respect that.
A warning from the past, but for the present, right. Pay attention, or there will be consequences. And then there's a Mothman. He feels like something out of science fiction, but so tied to a real tragedy. It's like the collapse of the Silver Bridge. it tore open something between our world and, I don't know, something else.
It's that mix of fantasy and reality that makes him so interesting.
He's become this icon. Books, movies, even a festival. People are drawn to it, even if it scares them. Like, we need those mysteries, something bigger than ourselves, something we can't fully explain.
The possibility of something more,
Hmm.
forces beyond us, beyond what we can understand.
It's humbling and kind of exciting at the same time to think we don't have it all figured out, that the world is still full of mystery and wonder. Maybe, just maybe, some of these creatures are more than just stories.
And that's a hope I think a lot of us share. Because it's true, if they're real, then the world is a much stranger and much more amazing place than we thought.
And who wouldn't want that? But even if they're not real, these cryptids, they still matter.
Definitely. They make us question, make us look deeper, embrace the possibility that things might be weirder, more fascinating than we ever thought.
You know, it's funny, even if these cryptids aren't real in like a scientific sense, the stories themselves are. And those stories, they tell us a lot about, well, us.
Absolutely, yeah. They're like reflections of our deepest fears, hopes, all that. Take the Thunderbird, for example.
Yeah.
This creature, so connected to the power of nature itself, capable of, well, amazing things and terrifying things.
And with everything going on in the world, the environment, it feels like that story has even more meaning now.
Doesn't it? Makes you think, what could these old myths teach us today about, I don't know, how to deal with the world as it is now?
It's like this reminder that we're not separate from nature. Not really, we're part of it. And what we do matters, you know?
Yeah, we push too far, there are consequences. And it's not just the environment either, right? These stories, they're about so much more. Morality, responsibility, what happens when we get greedy, get too ambitious, what we pass on to the next generation.
The impact we have, yeah. It's there with the Moth Man too, even if he's not a real creature. Just the idea, something watching, warning us about danger, it taps into something primal, right? That fear of the unknown.
And our need to explain the unexplainable, especially tragedy. The Mothman, he sticks around because he offers that, I don't know, a reason, even if it's a fantastical one, for something that doesn't make sense.
We crave that, don't we? An explanation, a reason. Like our brains are wired to find patterns, even when they're not there.
Totally. We are storytelling creatures. It's what we do. And these stories, whether true, not true, they help us make sense of the world, especially when it feels chaotic.
It's like a reminder that there are still mysteries out there, things we haven't figured out. And maybe, just maybe, some of the most amazing things, they're still out there waiting to be discovered.
Now, wouldn't that be something? The thought that we don't know it all, so much left to find out.
It makes you want to keep looking, right? Keep asking questions, exploring, makes you appreciate the world in a whole new way.
I couldn't agree more. So next time you're out there looking at the stars or maybe in the woods, remember those cryptids. Remember the stories, what they teach us, that mystery, that imagination. It's powerful stuff.
Beautifully said. And on that note, we're wrapping up our deep dive into North American cryptids. We hope you enjoyed the journey. Until next time, keep exploring, keep asking those questions, and never stop being curious. You never know what you might find out there.